All right, good morning. Atheists, agnostics, whatever you like to call yourself, you are welcome here. At Seattle Atheist Church, we call ourselves an atheist church because you will never hear anything supernatural.
Sorry.
That's okay. You'll never hear anything supernatural promoted from the podium. Let me share with you the Seattle Atheist Church Creed. Seattle Atheist Church was founded on the principles of scientific naturalism and secular ethics. Truth claims are attempted here, and we stand ready to revise our thinking in light of new information. We attempt to be excellent to all conscious beings, and we believe in good because good works in non-mysterious ways. If that sounds right to you, then you're probably in the right place. So I wanted to do a few bits of business. The first is, right now we're having our book swap. Feel free to take a book even if you didn't bring one. And after church today, we're going to go to the Wayward Cafe and play board games. Everyone is invited. That's on
coffee house. Wayward Cafe. It's not. And it's 1 block away. So. Okay,
Wayward Coffee House on 65th and Roosevelt. Thank you for that correction. And then on the 25th of February, we're going to have our Saturday Secular Social. That's at Browers, BROUWERS in Fremont at 2 o'clock. And on the 12th of March is our next planning meeting. So everyone is invited to planning meeting. If you had any question, you are invited. And I also want to thank everyone who's gone to seattleatheist.church and donated. Those donations make this whole thing possible. So thank you very much. Today I'm going to be talking about a book called The Gentle Art of Verbal Self-Defense, which was recommended by Eva. And I think that it's really worth reading. In fact, I got 3 of the books by the same author. So, you have all heard it said, it's not what you say, but how you say it that makes all the difference. And that's basically what this book is about. So, I'm going to focus on 3 different aspects of the gentle art of verbal self-defense. The first is helping you to become more aware so that you don't get drawn into fights. Okay? The second is that once you're having a conversation, what are the variables which will affect whether or not you're a pleasant conversationalist or whether or not you actually, at the extreme version, become an abusive conversationalist. And then we'll look at the roles that we take on during conversation and how we can select our roles consciously to be better communicators. Okay, so start by noticing what's happening in the conversation. In every conversation, either a question is being asked or some information is being given. If a question is being asked of you, there are one of 2 things it can mean. A lot of the time when somebody is asking a question, they are not actually seeking information, and no answer you give will be acceptable to them. And so you want to notice that right off the bat and not get drawn into it. So if somebody is asking you a question, it's a legitimate question, you can just answer it. Why do you keep leaving your coffee cup here in the morning? Oh, you know, I get in a big hurry and I forget to put it in the dishwasher. That's a clean exchange. Why do you always leave a mess for me to clean up? Probably is an opener for a fight, and you, any answer you give, you run the risk of being a placater. And if you try to placate with your answer, it might work this time, but then what happens is you set up a sort of a negative pattern where you're always going to be being put yourself in a situation where you're trying to placate somebody who's kind of being slightly verbally abusive to you. Okay, so on the other hand, sometimes when somebody starts a conversation with you, what they're doing is they're giving you some information. So if they're giving you some information, there's one of 2 things that it can mean. Either they're telling you something which is just a fact, or they're telling you something which is an opinion. So there's never any reason to fight over facts, because facts are things that can be verified. So if you just stay calm, it's like, well, you know, I don't think that sounds right to me, but we can look it up. And then when you get the answer, deliver the answer in as neutral a way as possible. Shouldn't be a gotcha for your partner. But even if both sides believe that they have facts which support their case, you still can just remain really calm and be like, well, let's discuss the facts. Now, sometimes when people are giving you information, what they're telling you is a matter of opinion. And that is difficult, because sometimes somebody gives you give an opinion and they have a difficult time expressing why that is their opinion. And if it's negative, it can put you on the defensive. So what you want to do is you want to quantify opinions and turn them into things which are more or less factual. Find out what the opinion is based on. So let's say the speaker says, the homemade donuts are disgusting. You might want to respond by saying, well, what are you comparing them to? Are you comparing them to Top Pot? You know, is it the texture of them? Is it the flavor? And now you have some objective criteria by which you can either agree or decide to do something different in the future. Okay? So you want to pinpoint the reasons for the opinion and then address the reasons. And try to get the person who's giving an opinion to be a little more specific. So let's say, for example, we're in a business context and somebody says, this report is useless. So try to find out, or if you're the person who's speaking, you might say, well, you know, I really was hoping that there'd be a summary at the top of all our reports so I could read the summary and then just skim the rest of the report. Next time, can we always have a summary? And that's a way to have a communication which is actually effective, right? Instead of just fighting. Now, part of the thing is that we have to be able to assume goodwill. And she goes into this long thing about the metaphors that we use. If you think of conversations as war, and it's all about shooting down someone's point or shutting someone down or whatever, you're setting yourself up to not have a very good time. Ideally, in a conversation, we have a shared metaphor of creating meaning together, almost like building a house, right? Laying foundation, figuring out what rooms you want to explore, that kind of thing. Now let's say, for example, which is in fact did happen to me recently, that I'm having a conversation with someone and I say, the Seattle Police Department is one of the best in the nation, and I think we have a really good police department here. If we have community voice, we have advocacy, we have de-escalation training. If the person assumes goodwill, they can explore with me, why did you come to that opinion, and let me tell you my counterfacts. Let me tell you that a couple years ago or 4 years ago, we bought 2 drones. And so we're concerned about, you know, the police department having drones. You can have a conversation where you're mutually respectful, listening to each other and exploring different ideas such that both sides can learn and grow. But if you can't assume goodwill, then the whole thing just shuts down and becomes a shouting match. When you're shouting at each other from 2 sides of the street, you are not communicating, okay? And Steve and I watched Bill Maher last night, and at some point this guy just started, you know, shouting at the other guy, and it was like, you know, communication has stopped effectively. So now, assuming that we have goodwill, we want to have a conversation with somebody, let's start paying attention to various variables in our delivery, which is the how you talk that matters. So for example, the volume of your voice, the tone of your voice, your acoustic stresses, those added inflections for emphasis, increased frequency of personal pronouns, such as you or I, exaggerating words like always and never, and a disregard for verbal traffic rules, such as interrupting or monopolizing a conversation. Okay, all those things are, you know, make the conversation no fun. In fact, the exact same wording often can be used, but depending on those variables, you get a very different delivery, okay? So in order to sound neutral, modulate your tone. So say, I agree, not I agree. Or, I agree. Say, sure, not sure. And especially like, I'm gonna say, with kids, these things are super important because you can get triggered by kids, just the volume or the tone or whatever. Pay attention to your emphasis. Did we read the memo versus did we read the memo? The use of pronouns. You always have to have your way whenever you go out, don't you? It's a lot more negative than, can we switch up where we go this time? And obeying the verbal traffic rules, such as not interrupting and not monopolizing the conversation, as I said. Okay, all of our ability to do that has to do with our ability to remain in control of our emotions. And if you are not in control of your emotions, it is very important, especially with the people you have a relationship with, to build in a rule that basically says it's okay to stop the conversation and come back to it when we are in control. When our mouth goes dry, our heart starts pounding, it's difficult to stay neutral. Our emotions can hijack the rational parts of our brain, and we can blurt out horrible things. So you might think it's preferable to say nothing. But clamming up and refusing to be in a conversation can also be a form of verbal aggression, because the traffic rules say that it's a kind of give and take. And so if you do the silent treatment, you're actually creating a verbal aggression also. So might be preferable to saying something you're going to regret later, but it is the best thing to do would be to make an agreement to come back to it later when you're calm again. Okay. Paying attention to our communication roles. So these are the rules. We can use blaming, playing victim, also known as placating, distracting, all three of those are bad, leveling, or computer mode. I'm going to give you some examples. So blaming mode is when something bad has happened and you're not taking responsibility for it, you're just kind of blaming, and often there's some kind of aggressive body language that goes along with it. So if it was my job to handle food for an event, I might say, you didn't tell me there were going to be vegetarians there. That's being a blamer. A victim mode might say, well, the cafe didn't have any sandwiches without meat. And that's using a kind of a passive body language too, A distractor might use distracting body language, literally starts moving the cups around on the table or whatever and say, but we got balloons and cake by going to that cafe. Right? A much better strategy is to use what's called leveling, where you just speak straight from the heart in a calm and non-defensive way. I should have asked if people had dietary restrictions. Or use computing mode, which is where you really stick to the facts in a calm, neutral way. 10% of people are vegetarians. That's not a lot, but we can add fruit to our order next time. Okay, so notice when you're going into blamer mode or victim mode or distractor mode, and try to ring that in. And try to use leveling, but sometimes it doesn't feel safe to level and just talk straight from your heart. So you can always revert back to using computer mode, okay? Now the problem with computer mode is you have to deliver it in a completely neutral way. If you're uptight, that tends to show. So how do you keep your emotions from hijacking the conversation? Okay, so I just want to say, it seems to me, for example, that Barack Obama used a very kind of neutral tone when saying in a lot of his speeches and things. You can be neutral and still be inspiring. Computer mode doesn't mean Dr. Spock, it means kind of sticking to the facts. And so if you start to feel in your body that emotions are arising, emotions arise accompanied by physical sensations. Start paying attention to those physical sensations, breathing into them, I guess breathing out more slowly than I just did, so breathing in, Breathing out, slowly, slowly, trying to let them dissolve if possible. And then a good thing to do is if you find yourself that you're really going to lose your stuff, that you exit the conversation and come back to it. So, in conclusion, if we can assume goodwill and pay attention to the characteristics of speech and notice our verbal traffic rules and notice and control the roles that we use, then we can have more productive conversations. Thank you very much.